Hey guys, it's Dr. Ellie here. I'm just hopping in on my pod to let you know that if you're a new parent or you're pregnant, you do not need to feel overwhelmed anymore about feeding your baby. If you're worried about like formula or breastfeeding or even starting solids, how to introduce allergens correctly, you're definitely not alone. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Ellie, a holistic pediatrician here in Asheville, and I'm founder of Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. I created this course, Nourish with Confidence, because of parents like you. It's super simple, it's self paced, it's easy to follow for busy parents who want a trustworthy, holistic, evidence based guidance or guide on how to feed their baby. So you're going to learn everything from choosing the best formula when breastfeeding is not an option, how to breastfeed if you're able to, and also how to introduce solid food safely and to avoid hidden toxins, how to set up your baby's gut health so that they can be healthy for the rest of their life. And so it comes with a lot of stuff, video modules, transcripts, references, PDFs, and quizzes. And of course, I'm always here in Asheville if you want to become a member too, to get all your questions answered. So as one parent said, Dr. Ellie, kind words in the third person, is incredibly knowledgeable and caring. She gave me peace of mind when I needed it most. So I recommend signing up. So go to my website, middlepathintegrativepediatrics.com/courses to enroll again today. Again, middlepathintegrativepediatrics.com/courses to enroll today. And this is because nourishing your baby shouldn't feel confusing. It should feel confident. All right. So wishing you well from Dr. Ellie. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Ellie, and I'm here with my pod, I Heal Kids. And if you don't know me, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, and my practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. And I see kiddos ages 0 to 21 for holistic pediatrics, and I also do functional medicine for ages 2 to 102. And if you don't know what functional medicine is, do not worry. I have a million podcasts on that. We will link them in the show notes, so please go back and look. But if you're experiencing burnout, weight gain, exhaustion, long COVID, digestive issues, or your child is, any of that, then please reach out for that. Okay, well, I'm super excited today. I'm meeting with Jabbarah Andrea Jacobson, and she is the heart behind Heart Fueled Tools, which is a gentle and powerful way to support kids, especially those kiddos who have like really intense big feelings. We all know people like that. I feel like I may have been like that as a child. Maybe still am. I don't know. And drawing from the nurtured heart approach, her background in occupational therapy and her own lived experience, which cannot be discounted, she helps parents understand what's happening beneath the surface and how to respond with confidence. Jabbarah's work centers on helping families notice what's already going well, building connections in everyday moments, and creating the safety kids need to thrive. So her warm, relatable style leaves parents feeling hopeful, empowered, and ready to try something new. Welcome, Jabbarah.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So you have been literally an occupational therapist for 20 years. But the nurtured heart approach, I keep calling it heart fueled tools. Nurtured heart approach. It's not exactly occupational therapy. So how did your journey lead you here? Like what inspired you to create this type of work or do this
Sure.
type of work? Yeah.
And thanks for asking. I am, even when I was in OT school, I was always saying, I just want to work with the behaviors and what's underlying that and how people show up in the world. And how can we really inspire people to just show up in the world as their best version of themselves and to feel really connected with themselves and other people. And so I've always used kind of off the cuff approaches along with evidence based practice as well. And in 2012, I moved to San Francisco and I was working in the school district there. And I just noticed that so many of the kids that were being referred for school-based services weren't qualifying for the services because they weren't at the 13% or below in terms of disability. But there were a lot of kids that really needed help because they just had unreliable systems and were showing up in ways that felt a little bit more chaotic. So I just started, I started my own practice when I was living in San Francisco to really work with those kids. And as my own journey with myself evolved, and I noticed that all the kids that were gravitating towards me were highly sensitive kids, and I was noticing that I was a highly sensitive person myself. So, and I'm not somebody that sticks to labels, but it did help me to understand my experience in the world. And as I continued through my journey, I moved to Asheville and I was working in some pediatric clinics, and I just never really loved working in the clinic because it didn't feel like it could really translate to home for me. And then I just, was thinking about my own practice again. And in the meantime, I was on a heart rhythm meditation retreat and somebody was wearing a Nurture Heart Approach shirt. And I had heard about the Nurture Heart approach, and I went up to him and I said, "Oh, I see you're wearing a Nurture Heart approach shirt." And he said, "Oh yeah, that's my program. I wrote that." And so he gave me a book and I read it cover to cover on the airplane home. And something I forgot to mention is prior to that, my sister, who's also an occupational therapist, said, you're doing the nurtured heart approach, right? And I said, don't tell me that because I don't want to read somebody else's approach because one day I'm going to write one and I don't want to be accused of plagiarism. But now here I am several years later reading this book going, "Oh my god, I don't need to write the approach because he's written it, and what he's written is so much better than what I could have come up with." So, within days, I was signed up to become a trainer, and, now I'm an advanced trainer, and I just love the Nurtured Heart approach. So and just one other thing, you had mentioned Heart-Fueled Tools, and you were not wrong to say that because that's the LLC that I just started, where I teach the Nurtured Heart approach through Heart-Fueled Tools.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just conflating business name with the name of the approach. That's okay.
Yes, it's perfectly great.
We'll make sure we get it all right in the show notes. I want to pop in because so I just did a podcast. My last podcast is actually all about adrenal regulation. We kind of look at it as I think we're talking about the same thing, but maybe like a different level of optics. So I talk a lot about adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysfunction and like kind of vagal nerve tone or balance, however you want to say that, as being the first thing that we want to treat. So oftentimes with kids that are experiencing like a lot of issues like gut problems or inattention, anxiety, all of this, in the functional medicine world, there's a lot of focus on treating the kid's gut, which is great and fabulous. But that said, in my experience, until we kind of get the nervous system regulated and get our parasympathetic nervous system up and running, which is the system that's like relaxed and, rest, digest, and not having us in fight or flight all the time, like the sympathetics, it's really impossible to start treating the gut or any of these other systems because the nervous system is kind of in control of it, if you will. And it sounds like that's pretty similar, or maybe there's some parallels there between what I'm suggesting and what you're doing as well. Does that sound right to you or not really?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one definitely regulation is at the bottom of everything, and I think that one thing that I really have moved into as I've come to this approach, and I think this answers your question, is there's the internal piece that can really also be sparked by the external piece as well. So while you're really looking at when you're talking about looking at the vagal nerve and looking at the gut system, what I'm really looking at is how do our interactions set our nervous system so that it can function in these ways that you're talking about. And I don't think that anything is isolated. And I think that they all are impacting each other all the time. It's kind of like, if the gut's off, then the regulation's going to be off. It's going to be harder to relate to your environment. But if you're feeling like you're being ridiculed all the time, then your gut's going to be off because you're not feeling safe from the information that you're receiving and how you're processing it. Yeah, does that feel like that answers your
Yeah,
question? Okay.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think we're kind of talking about it from two different lenses. Although I do love that you're talking about the relational lens too, because that's really important when it comes to the parent child dyad or triad or whatever ad it may be,
Yes.
all the humans in that child's life. maybe you can talk a little bit about, I know why you're so passionate about Nurtured Heart, but what makes it different from like maybe other parenting frameworks that you've seen? And also, maybe you can help us discern like, I could see there being a question around, is my child highly sensitive? Are they having big feelings or are they quote unquote bad? For lack of a better word. Can you help us think through all of that? Like how this is different and how to discern all of that?
Sure. There are no bad children.
I know.
There's nobody bad. Our kids are just really working it out, right? We have to remember that they have not had as much experience on this planet as we have. And also our kids really do mirror back to us, what we are, what we're giving them. And one thing that, you asked about, what it makes the nurture heart approach different. And I really sat with that question for a while. And the first thing that came up for me is that it's a cellular approach, that it's an approach that really speaks to the soul of a child. It really helps the child see, and adults as well, see who they are in a really beautiful light. And it's based in evidence of what they're doing. So, in a lot of parenting, we do a lot of good jobs and thank yous. And that is what we call emotional junk food. It just kind of evaporates, just kind of tastes good in the moment, but it doesn't have a lot of landing power and a lot of sticking power. But in the nurture heart approach, we really look at what's going on and we find even the smallest crumb of what's going right to make sure that the child sees their success. Because when we see our success, what we focus on, we expand. And so if you feel successful, then you want to show up more successful. If you really think about like kids playing video games, they just want to get to the next level of highest
Yeah.
achievement. And we actually use a video game analogy while we teach the nurture heart approach to help us understand that. How do we help our kids feel like they're getting that kind of feedback in day to day? And then another piece of the nurture heart approach that I really love is accountability. I know a lot of times we say that it's out of the child's control and they don't have a choice and it's about the regulation. But one thing that Howie really teaches is that everything is a choice. So we can choose to make the effort to get regulated in that moment, or we could choose not to. We could choose, when we're whining, when we're yelling, when we're arguing, we're choosing that. So
Hmm.
we can choose to not be arguing also. So, and I know that that sounds like, oh, that feels a little bit cold. But when we really break it down and we really start to look at how it works, it's amazing. When kids feel celebrated, they want to feel celebrated. They want to be celebrated. And so I like, I've worked with some families that were really into gentle parenting. And with that, I just saw a lot of lack of boundaries and kids really confused as to what's okay and what's not okay. So the other piece of the nurture heart approach is it's very, very clear. In fact, we have three stands that we stand for, and the third one is clarity. So we're really making sure that the kids know what the rules are. And when I talk about rules, these are rules of healthy relationship, is how I see them. And so it's really a reciprocal engagement. It's not just about giving the kids, everything that they need. It's about taking care of ourselves as well.
I love everything that you're saying right now. It really resonates. I think just to pop out a couple little things that you mentioned, boundaries, which I think are so important to learn and know what they are, because I do believe that it creates a sense of safety, you know? And I think about this, like, even in the workplace, like if we even talk about like an adult in the workplace, if I had no idea what was considered okay in that workplace, I could be off in left field and my boss would be like, well, I don't know why you were at Starbucks right now. Like you were supposed to be like on the phone. I was like, well, you never told me that. I don't know. So like it's like, this weird sense of like not knowing how to kind of be in the environment. And I notice that sometimes like we can get on the negative too with kids sometimes where it's like, don't do this, don't do that, sit, don't jump. But no one's actually said what to do. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I was at a little I don't know what you would call it, like a community gathering, basically trying to
Yeah.
just give some joy to some families. And I set up a Nurture Heart Approach booth and I taught a heart breath. And there was a family, beautiful couple that came with their 2-year-old. And the whole time the dad, he's pouring salt and cinnamon. And I don't really care if he doesn't get it completely in the jar, it doesn't matter to me. And but the dad was gentle, 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 gentle the whole time. And the
Ooh,
kid, yeah, exactly. And the kid, he was gentle the whole time, but never did the parent say, "Oh, I see you being gentle." Right? So
yeah.
we give the direction, but then we don't give the evidence that you're following it or that you're showing up in that way.
And this reminds me kind of what you were saying earlier, or maybe to just put a finer point on it about the emotional junk food. I think this is what you're saying, right? It's like instead of just like good job, it's like, oh, this is specifically what is, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it like more specific? Is that what you mean by that statement? Like emotional junk food? Can you help us pick that out a little or tease it out?
Sure.
Yeah.
You're on the right track, and there's a little bit extra.
Okay. Good. Good.
Yeah. So, I think by now a lot of parents have heard because my ears are big, and when I'm around Asheville, I'm listening to how our parents talking to their kids, and I'll say I've felt a shift in the past couple of years, and I'm hearing a lot more appreciative language, and I'm hearing a lot more of and seeing a lot more of not energizing negativity around town. But so when we are giving in Nurture Heart Approach, we call these recognitions, and we have 4 different types of recognition techniques. I'm not going to get into all of them here, but I'll just give you the outline. And that is that we're really looking in the truth of the moment and we're looking for evidence of greatness. And so when we're giving a recognition, we're saying, like you said, I see this is happening. I see that oh, I see that you picked up your plate after you were done eating. And I see that you're taking it to the sink. Wow, that shows you're responsible. So now we add a character quality with it and we say, this shows who you are, right? So now we're developing our sense of self. And it's not just about what did I do, but how did what I do speak to who I am? And one mother that I've been working with for a few years, and not because her family's completely out of control. In the beginning, her kids were really challenging, and now things are a lot smoother and easy. She shared what she really loves about the Nurture Heart approach is that she feels like what she's doing is like placing light posts on their pathway and just kind of lighting them up. And so really giving that soul nurturing sense of maybe I'm not considerate all the time, right? Because who is? But
Mhm.
I know I'm a considerate person because I have been considerate, and you saw me, you noticed me be considerate. You valued that I was considerate, and
Mhm.
I'm considerate. And now the next time that I wanna do something inconsiderate, am I gonna get a big reaction for that? And if so, then yay, maybe I will be. But it but if I don't get that big reaction for being inconsiderate, well, it was a lot more worth it to be considerate because I am a considerate person. This was the glitch, not the
Yeah.
being considerate was the glitch.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love this. I also feel like this could work with the relationship, like adult relationships, like
100%.
like
Yes.
when my husband puts the dishes in the dishwasher instead of the sink. And
Yes.
you're like, "Thank you so much. You're so considerate."
Exactly, exactly. And
And
I'm
what a
glad.
better way to be. What a better way to be than just like, "Why didn't you put them in the dishwasher? It's right there. Come
Totally,
on now."
totally.
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, I see you
Yeah.
moving towards the dishwasher."
Oh, I love that. That's a
Yeah.
good precursor. Well, I wanted to ask you, Jabbarah, about, so I know you had mentioned like sometimes energy is involved, but some people kind of shy away from that word energy. Like when you're talking about like energy in this type of work, like what are you talking about? Like is it electromagnetic energy? Is it like heart energy? Like what exactly does that mean?
Great question. First, let me tell you what I don't mean.
Okay,
I
good
don't
idea.
I don't mean, "Oh, I just need to take my kid to the playground and get all of his energy out." right? Which is
Okay.
what I hear so often from parents. And a lot of times there's a dysregulation issue happening underneath that one. But, but it's not about that. It's not about, right? It's about the feeling underneath the relationship. It's really what runs the entire show. It's really what runs how it has a lot to do with how we feel. So let me just say, when you're in a really good mood and you have something really exciting you want to share, and you come home and the person that greets you is in kind of a dumpy mood, and you're so excited to share with them, and then they're like, yeah, great. Like, it kind of takes some of that excitement away. And you kind of
Yeah.
walk out of the room feeling like, like what
Yeah.
just happened here? I was so excited. And so that's really what we're talking about here. There's this energy, that feeling underneath. And so just another example, eh, me being somebody who's very keyed into energy growing up, I would hear my parents or my sisters saying things, and maybe it was sarcastic or whatever, and I could hear there was like a different truth underneath what they were saying. And then I would say, I think this is what you're really saying. And they would say, no, no, no. And I just remember like just feeling very confused all the time because what I was feeling about the situation didn't match what I was being told about the situation.
Mm.
So in this case, we're really talking about that energy exchange and the relationship exchange underneath the surface. What makes you want to show up? And in the nurtured heart approach, the energy, children feel a lot of connected energy when we show up for them in that excited way of, why are you doing that? Right? They don't understand on an energetic level that we're not happy with it. Right? What they're feeling is, ooh, 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 my energetic bucket is getting hit right now. Hey, yeah. And so they see these misbehaviors or these poor choices or, whatever that may be as a celebration. And
Yes.
so then that continues those behaviors because they're getting that response. And, I love to tell the story about my nephew who, he would just do things like, let's say, turn the volume up on the TV. And my sister would say, turn the TV down. And he would turn it up. And she would say, turn the TV down. And he would turn it up. And she would say, turn the TV down. And he would be like, yeah, oh, yeah, I got it now. And he turned the TV down,
Uh-huh.
no problem. But, so one thing I didn't mention is that the Nurture Heart approach was designed for intense kids and really started for kids with ADHD. When Howie started it in Tucson, people were seeing that it was really working. And so all of the most high level behavioral kids or all the most, high level difficult kids to work with were being referred to him. And there was great amount of change and transformation in each of them. So is really it really speaks that language of intensity because a lot of the parenting stuff out there is be calm and respond calm, but what if your child needs that energetic hit? And so what's wrong with saying, look at you, yes, you just put your dishes in the sink, right?
Uh-huh.
And now we're giving them that same hit of energy that they want, but it's not because it's in response to negativity. So
Yeah.
that's really what I'm talking about when I think about energy in the relationships. What really motivates us to show up in what way and what are we feeling underneath the surface and that connection.
Okay. So I was curious about this idea of upside down energy. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Or is that something different?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In our society, we turn on the news and it's all negative news, right?
Mhm.
And we, for some reason, have this bend of it's really easy to show up for negativity, right? Um,
Yeah.
and when we show up in that big way, we're like toys to our kids. And so right now, what they're experiencing is this upside down energy of we all show up for problems, right? But
Mhm.
when do we show up for celebration? So it's really about flipping the script in terms of how do we celebrate every moment, rather than having to mm, I can't even think of a word for it.
No, I
Yeah.
know what you mean. I do. And I kind of think about and maybe you can reflect on this a little bit as well, but sometimes I think about, this idea that, maybe this is a bit old fashioned, but maybe this idea that children should be like quiet or not express themselves in any way and things like, especially some girls have been socialized this way to like not use their voice. And I wonder about the damage that that causes, down the line if you aren't able to use your voice at a time where it's needed, or you aren't able to rely on your intuition and know, no, this is not right for me. Like, this is not okay. And I need to, take some kind of action or leave or, tune into those fear signals or, I don't know, just that this idea that we should all be quote unquote good. I think there's something to be said for like, no, like she's using her voice to express herself. Maybe we don't want to express in that way. Maybe there's a better way. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit. But I sort of wonder about, suppressing children's voices and needs and wants and desires.
Yeah, I am with you on that. So let's say that scenario that you just gave. Somebody's expressing their voice very loudly. Maybe they're yelling at you. If the rule had been no yelling, then we'll invite them to reset. But let's say that, they're they're yelling and they're not yelling at you, but they're yelling an expression of their anger or whatnot. So that's a difference, right? There's a subtle difference there. Um, and so we could say, wow, look at you. You really have a strong opinion and you are expressing yourself. Look at how much passion you have. Look, I hear you getting louder and louder and louder because this seems so important to you. You are passionate. You are dedicated to your cause, right? So now we can show what's positive underneath this. And then what happens is as those messages go in and get integrated, then we start to use that same passion, but in more in healthy ways, right? So again, like you're just talking about expressing emotions, right? And I think I jumped the bridge back into like feeling being yelled at. So because that's generally the kinds of questions I get.
Yeah. No,
But
same. That was, yeah, along those lines for sure. It's kind of goes with that, this like idea of like, be quiet, sit still, don't raise your hand, all of these like things, especially when I was a child. I hope things are slightly different now, but certainly for people who were, labeled as female, at birth, there was this, I remember there being a strong expectation to not speak out. And I'm not sure how healthy that was. But I do agree, like, the yelling, like how can we reframe that? And I actually really like, and I'm going to tell my husband to tell me that exact thing when I start to escalate. Because y'all, I'm an Aries. I'm not gonna lie. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm from Ireland. Like, there's a little fiery beast in here. I may look sweet, but sometimes that passion comes out. And he's just the kindest, sweetest, chillest person ever. So I think this is what my like inner baby needs is like, hey, you are passionate. I'm gonna totally tell him to say that. That's totally good advice. And I'd be like, yes, I am. And you're right. And now I can talk.
yes. Yes,
And I'm going to
yes.
use it in the clinic too. That's going to be so good. That's all for today's podcast of I Heal Kids. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation with Jabbarah Andrea Jacobson as much as I did. In part 2 of our discussion, we'll dive even deeper into the heart-centered approach, exploring what the research and evidence show, how to navigate parenting challenges in modern times, and how understanding our children's big feelings can strengthen connection and support for both kids and parents alike. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. So I'm Dr. Ellie with Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics here in Asheville, where I practice both holistic pediatrics and functional medicine for children and adults. And if you're new or an expecting parent, click on my new online course, Nourish with Confidence, where I teach you how to feed your baby in the first year, from breast to bottle feeding to solids and gut health, all through a holistic lens. Wishing you well.